give you some other history other than that one. And I try to, because history is always an ongoing process. I think whenever we say, no, this is absolutely, positively the way history is, history shows us different.
Correct. Yes.
And it busts up our thesis. You see? Now, we know that these people, the Egyptians, had full access to the earth. We have maps that is drawn on the complete earth, of the complete earth. Thousands and thousands of years old. And there's only one way this could have happened. Number one, they got it from a concept of space, or they actually traveled the globe. Now, one of the other stories is coming that I got from Memphis, Tennessee in 1993. Now, I don't let people tell me how scholarship is supposed to come to the conclusion of how scholarship is done. There is such thing as empirical evidence, case study, field work, and anthropological study, where you get certain things based on folklore, based on narratives of people in geographical locations just as authentic as you find in a rock or some type of artifact. Now, interesting story, when I was in Memphis, Tennessee in 1993, doing a lecture down there. Did a lecture for the Nation of Islam. Sister came through, one of the sisters of the community. She invited me to a house on the Underground Railroad. And we went in the house, and I did a lecture in the house, and then she took me downstairs where the slaves used to have to hide out in the basement. And she shut the doors on a couple of us, and it was pitch black under the house. And she even mentioned that how they had to either drug the babies, or by keeping the babies drunk half the time, or they have to knock them out if company came to the house with the white man upstairs. And these babies start crying up under the house. This particular point on the Underground Railroad, it was said that they made it to this particular point in Memphis, Tennessee, that it would be a breeze to go straight up north, undetected. But they had to go through rough terrain from all parts of the South to make it to this particular house in Memphis, Tennessee. This is a woman that did the history on this. She said, what made this house so special was one thing that we witnessed when we went up under the basement where the slaves used to hide out. There was actually railroad tracks up under the house. And she's saying that this house could very well be the house in which the word Underground Railroad was named. Because there was railroad tracks under the house. We actually did see this. And we know the house was one of the last stops in Memphis, Tennessee, before you go on into freedom in the north, where the other safe passages. But if you got to that particular house, you pretty much could bet that it was going to be an easy ride. But she told me a curious story. A white person knew about her, knew that she had done a lot of work in the black community, and knew that she was about uncovering knowledge of her people. And she said somewhere in the late 80s or the early 90s, white guy was dying. And he called on her, because he'd seen pictures. She always saw her popping up in the newspaper, uncovering this and uncovering that. And she had already done a whole lot of publicity and a whole lot of information on that Underground Railroad. So he called her at house. So he called her over. And apparently there was a little island in the river near Memphis. And the water subsided, and the island got bigger and bigger and bigger. The University of Tennessee, which got the big old glass pyramid down there. You've been down there and saw this thing?
I've seen it.
And the statue of Ramesses, that the president of Hemmitt gave them, a replica of Ramesses. They went and excavated the land, and they dug up a lot of ancient black bodies. In that land, on that island in the river in Memphis, Tennessee. The lady went on to say that based on legend has it, that when the Europeans got to Memphis, Tennessee, they didn't name Memphis, Tennessee based on their knowledge of Memphis, Egypt, or Memphis, Kemet, based on them being Masons or whatever. In this particular case, what happened is, the legend has it, is when they first settled the land, the Native Americans, or the Native Indigenous people that we call Indians, or the Native Americans, said that this particular place is called Memphis. And they insisted upon it that this place was to remain Memphis. And it was the Native Americans that taught the European settlers about Memphis. And they went into the story. This is remarkable stuff. They went into the story that at their first beginning of whenever they migrated in, there were these Egyptians living on the land in Memphis. That was a subsidiary of original Memphis, Egypt.
What period are we talking?
It's hard to say because we have to find out the period of when these particular Native Americans got there. So it had to be a very early period, probably a couple of hundred years before the European settlers got there. So it's not going to be that hard to do the work on when the Europeans settled Memphis. And they said, the story goes that this is Memphis, named after groups of Egyptians or black people that was here when we migrated into the land, the Native Americans. And the story goes that, as you know, in Africa and in Egypt, they didn't have a real jail system because certain things were taboo. So somebody says it's kind of hard to believe that death is taboo because we have so much people being murdered around us till it's a way of life, until it's kind of hard to perceive that death can be taboo. But if you just notice black people right in the 20th century, before the 1980s, we had several things in our community we just didn't do.